Hello, and welcome to another episode of Tales of a Death Doula. I'm Martha, and I am a certified death doula, and that means that I help people make their preparations as they're coming to their end of life process, and I help them make their decisions as well as sit bedside at the time of death, and I also help people with funeral arrangements. In this whole process of studying to become a death doula and working with people in their end-of-life processes, it's really granted me the opportunity to understand more about how to live a better life. The more you study about death, the more obvious it gets of how to live a better life. So, in this episode of Tales of a Death Doula, I'm going to be talking about my recent mycelium journey. So, if you've been following me for a little while, then you might have heard about my previous ayahuasca journeys that I've had. And I have a wonderful spiritual advisor and counselor who is an intuitive healer who recently decided that she wanted to host mycelium journeys in a ceremonial atmosphere and for healing, for spiritual healing. And I have never done mycelium before, and I wanted to experience it to see how it differed from ayahuasca. So a few weeks ago, we had a beautiful ceremony here at my house, and we had mycelium that had been wholly blessed by the people who grew the wonderful mushrooms, and we took them in a very ceremonial manner. We all had intentions for what we were going into the journey for, what we were there for, and it was quite amazing. It did not disappoint. So plant medicines, how have plant medicines helped the human experience for centuries and eons, since basically time began? Mycelium is mushrooms, as you may or may not know, and there's a big theory out there in the scientific world about apes, that perhaps they may have eaten some mushrooms that gave them mycelium journeys because of the quick time frame that the ape brains went from being so much smaller to growing so much bigger, and that hasn't been proven natural in the evolutionary process with other animals, other mammals. It was a very quick change that happened as the evolution from apes to mammals to humanoids happened. And that sounds true to me. That sounds right to me, because it definitely seems like there was something going on to really spur those DNA changes that happened from apes to mammals. Now, who knows? Maybe the aliens also came down and had a little something to do with it. Who knows? But this idea, this theory, that maybe that helped with their evolutionary process to have a bigger brain and become humans, as the evolutionary process happens. So I wanted to go and explore this, but I also didn't want to just take some mushrooms and have a trip. I wanted to do it in a very ceremonial, very intentional way. I wanted to have a holy person there to hold the space in ceremony. So just like in my ayahuasca journeys, all of them have been led by shamans. and all of them have been very holy experiences, not just here, take a drug and go have a trip. It's more about, I want to reconnect with spirit. I want to remember who I am. I want to remember why I'm here. I want to connect with my ancestors. I want to remember my previous timelines. All of these things that are really kind of holy spiritual intentions that I have. So I'm here to tell you a little bit about my mycelium journey. When you start the ceremony, my lovely guide, my intuitive healer, had our mushrooms laid on a plate of flowers. It was all beautiful, and she was saging the mushrooms for us, and then she passed the plate around, and we all chose our own mushroom. And I just picked up the mushroom that was, right in front of me on the plate, and she wanted us all to look at and smell and, connect with our mushroom that we were holding before we ingested it. And lo and behold, as I'm looking at my little mushroom, and I picked one that had a little mushroom cap on it, and there was a tiny little heart. It was so exciting because my whole intention was, I just want to feel the love from my ancestors. It was, I wanted my mom, really, that's what I wanted. I wanted my mom to come and love on me. I wanted to be loved on. And I wanted my ancestors to come and love on me. That was my intention. And so getting my little mushroom and seeing that there was just this little, it was a white mushroom cap, and it had a little brown, it was a heart. It was the most bizarre thing in the world to see that I had picked up a random mushroom off the plate, and that I had picked up one that had a little tiny heart. It was just a little brown. I'm sure it was, maybe the mushroom had been banged up or something on it, but it had formed a shape of a brown little tiny heart on the outside of the mushroom. So right off the bat, I knew that I had the right mushroom for me, because that was my intention, is to feel some love, get some loving from the universe. And my mushroom had a little tiny heart on it. And I showed my intuitive healer. She's like, oh my gosh, yes, that it does look like a heart on the outside of your mushroom. So that was amazing. We ingested our mushrooms just by chewing them and eating them. I like mushrooms, and so the taste of a mushroom doesn't bother me. And so it was kind of chewy, and we chewed that up. And then the intent was to sit outside by my fire pit in my backyard garden. I have a big garden. I garden as a hobby, and my backyard in the fall is very beautiful, and I have this big giant tree that overhangs my backyard, and it's kind of a little tree of life kind of tree. It's a beautiful tree with big broad branches. It's an American elm tree, so you'll know, and its leaves are changing colors, and it's all gold and green, and it's just a beautiful tree. And then I had a lot of mums and a lot of my native flowers that are still blooming in the fall, and it just was a lovely, lovely setting. And I have a fire pit in my backyard, and so we thought that that would be a lovely place to kind of do a ceremonial kind of journey. So we bundled up. It was cold outside, and we bundled up and lit the fire pit, and just kind of settled in for the journey in my outdoor chairs around my fire pit. And my intuitive healer was there to help just kind of guide us and make sure that we were safe, make sure that we felt safe, that we felt cared for. And she was there tucking in our blankets around us and giving us our water bottles and handing us our roses to hold. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful setting. And again, I want to stress the feeling safe aspect of it and the ceremonial aspect of it. She had a braided sweet grass, which is very traditional in traditional plant medicine ceremonies. I know in the ayahuasca ceremony, this is how they do it in Peru, to have the sweet grass burning it's a connection. It's a way to connect with our ancestors. Sweet grass, if you look it up for ceremonial uses, calls in your ancestors. That's its purpose in ceremony. And so she had a braided strand of sweetgrass that she threw onto our little backyard fire pit. And things started happening about 30 minutes in. My garden started dancing. And oh my goodness, it was so amazing to see the show that my garden put on for me. Plants and bushes and even the grass. The grass started dancing and spiraling up, and just everything was just dancing in my garden, and the little flowers started to kind of sing. I could hear this little bell, kind of like bells, and it was just so happy and so amazing to see. And it was a very visual and audible treat for me to see how happy my garden was, and how happy all these plants that I have lovingly taken care of and planted and watered all summer, and that everything was just so happy and alive, and everything came to life. Everything kind of had a mind of its own and was just dancing. So I got out there in the yard and started dancing with all my flowers and bushes and even the grass, just doing little dances with it. And oh, the joy! It was joyful. I felt like I was in a cartoon, because my bushes that I have near my fence, they were just like, whoa! And they were so happy. And everything was just like a cartoon. It was like I was in a visual cartoon out there in the middle of my yard, dancing with everything around me, all the life around me. And I really felt like I was on a planet that was breathing. I could feel the earth breathing underneath my feet. And it made me feel like I'm not just on a rock spinning in space. I'm on a living, breathing, beautiful planet with all this beautiful life, all this joy all around me. And then we sat back down by the fire after I had my little dance party with my little flowers. And we sat back down by the fire and got all wrapped up again and looked up at the sky. And the morning sky was full of these wispy clouds that looked for all the life like feathers. And these feathers turned into like rolling waves, like ocean waves and feathers. And it was just so beautiful. And as I'm sitting there and the medicine's really coming on now, I'm looking at these beautiful wispy clouds, and they're all moving just like the plants had started moving. The clouds started kind of dancing for me. And as I'm looking at the sky, all of a sudden, a host of angels came down from the sky, and they would look like it was women, and they looked like they all had on head scarves, kind of like nuns, but they were blue and white like the clouds. But there were hundreds, maybe thousands of them, so many, and they were all women. And they were just singing and humming and swaying, and they just came down in droves and surrounded us in my garden by the fire pit. They were just all around us by the fire, and they were just singing and humming, and they were singing, "Holy, holy, holy." And it was just beautiful. And I felt holy because they were here and they were here with us, communing with us, singing, holy, holy, holy. And this choir of angels all around us, these women in these blue headscarves and white robes. It was just amazing. A holy, holy experience. As that kind of dissipated and they all kind of went back up into the clouds, I started kind of staring into the fire because the fire was crackling right in front of me. And I had a long-stemmed red rose that my intuitive healer had brought us all roses outside to have. And this rose wanted to speak to me. And so I reached forward and grabbed the rose. And as I just looked into the rose, meditating on this red rose, this red long-stemmed rose, I just fell into the rose. As I'm looking at all the petals, and it was so beautiful, I just kind of fell into the rose. And it felt like I was in a kaleidoscope of rose petals. I just had rose petals swirling all around me like a kaleidoscope. And it was another holy, holy experience. To be inside a rose is truly a holy experience. And that kind of dissipated after a few minutes. Who knows how long the actual time of it was, but it felt like a few minutes that I had been inside the rose. And then I came back to myself and I was still holding the rose and I just kissed the rose and thanked it. And then I actually wanted to ingest some of the rose too, so I took off a couple of the rose petals and I ate them, and oh my gosh, it tasted so beautiful. You know, you can eat roses. Roses are edible. And these were fresh roses. And I had just been dancing inside that rose and ingesting it. The taste of the rose petal tasted so sweet and so just deliciously beautiful. Tasted like love. And it was just so amazing. And that was another kind of holy experience, and ingesting it into my body. I wanted that rose in me, in my heart. After that, I just kind of sat back. I got all cuddled up in my warm blankets and I held my rose. I was just holding my rose to my heart, this long-stemmed rose. It wound up being like I was holding a scepter on a throne, holding a scepter. I was just holding my rose. And as I'm holding my rose, kind of staring into the fire, smelling that sweet grass smell all around, suddenly, all around me, kind of out of the fire, I had these very African native tribal dancers. And they were all in very ancient African tribal masks, and they had the bells on their ankles, and they were doing a tribal dance in front of me. And it was reconnecting way back, back to when we were in Africa. And that was amazing. And just as that experience kind of dissipated, suddenly I had Egyptian spirit family members come in Egyptian outfits. They were wearing white Egyptian outfits. And I had a gentleman come through. I went through a little veil. It's like I went through a curtain of light. It was all colors curtains, like a curtain. It was like a veil. I literally went through a veil. And it was like one of those sparkly, those lights that look like a curtain. It's like a curtain of lights, but all different colors of lights. And then this gentleman came, as I went through this curtain of lights, there was a gentleman who came up to me in an Egyptian outfit, and he had the headdress on and the white Egyptian outfit, and he came up to me like this, just ready to hug me. And he was smiling, and he came up right up to my face, and he hugged me. And there was all these Egyptians everywhere. And I had some Egyptians that were fanning me with the big, like, ostrich feather fans, and they were fanning me. And I had this gentleman and a younger gentleman, and they kept coming up and touching my shoulder and touching my face and saying that they loved me, and they were kept trying to hold my hands. And it was just like all these Egyptians were around me as I'm sitting there, like, for real, sitting in my chair holding my rose, bundled up in my covers. And it was just so amazing. And apparently I have an Egyptian spirit family that was there to love on me and give me some of the love that I was looking for. I wanted ancestors to come and give me some love, and who knew? I had Egyptian spirit family who wanted to come through. In that dream session, Anubis, who is the god of the dead, me and Death have a thing. I'm a death doula, and I learn lessons. Death is one of my spirit guides. And so usually on these plant medicine journeys, Death will show up at one point or another. Anubis was on my right. So the gentleman and the younger gentleman that were there solidly giving me love and holding on to me and hugging me, they were on my left. Anubis came up, like he came up out of the ground, he came up in front of me, and he clasped hands with the gentleman. He and the gentleman greeted each other like this, clasped hands and nodded at each other. And then Anubis went around the fire pit. All this was happening while my eyes were closed, but I was obviously having my journey in my backyard around my fire pit. And this kind of all happened around my fire pit. Anubis went back behind the fire pit to the other side, and I had this big pecan tree on the other side of my fence of the backyard. And Anubis kind of rose up and became Death. Like, the pecan tree became Death. And he said, "Welcome!" like big splash. "Welcome!" And I went, "Oh no, not again." Because in my I've had 3 ayahuasca journeys, and in all 3 of them, they've taken me to the underworld. And I thought, oh no, not again. This one I wanted to be, loved on. I don't want to go down to the underworld. So my first reaction was, oh no, not again. And Death had a robe on, like almost this color, like a maroon color robe. And he opened his robe and said, "Wake up!" He was very excited. He wasn't scary. He was just like excited to be there. "Welcome!" And he threw his robe open and said, "Wake up!" When he threw his robe open, all of these like skeleton people came out of his robe, and they were all smiling, skeletons obviously, because they can't help but smile. Skeletons can't help but smile. But they were all smiling, and I took it to understand that these were my ancestors. These were like family members and ancestors, and they were all there to welcome me. And I was like, okay, wait. And I had to pause, because although I have interacted with Death and spiritual journeys many times, they were welcoming me. And I'm like, whoa, hold up. Are you here for me? We're not really doing this. This is not my time. And Death was just kept saying, "Welcome!" And all of these skeletons that were coming out of him were like, welcome. They were all welcome, welcome, welcome. They were all very excited. And I was like, oh, whoa, am I supposed to go with you? And the question that I've been trained to ask if there's anything scary or upsetting happening in a journey is this for the highest good of all beings? Is this for my highest good? Is this for the highest good of all beings? And so I asked that, and I immediately said, this is not for the highest good of all beings. This is not good for my intuitive healer who's here. That would mess her up. And that would mess up everybody else who's here on the journey. This is not at the time. We're not doing this right now. And I was like, and I just reiterated my intention was to connect with my ancestors and to feel loved. I wanted to feel loved on. And so I just said, look, I thank you for coming. Death, thank you for coming. I acknowledge you. I'm actually happy to see you. But I choose love. I choose love always, in all ways. And I'm going to choose to stay here with my Egyptian family who's here around me and feel loved. So thanks for coming. Peace out. So basically, I just didn't go with death, and I, turned to focus my attention on my Egyptian family and all of these Egyptians who were around me. And just at that moment that I had told death, no, thank you, I'm going to stay here and have this journey with my Egyptian spirit family, and I choose love, and I'm choosing to feel all this wonderful love with this Egyptian journey that I'm having. At that moment, Sekhmet came out of my fire pit, roaring out of my fire pit. So death was kind of behind the fire pit, taking up the pecan tree behind the fire pit. And Sekhmet came roaring out of the fire in front of me, right in front of my face, and said, "Rise!" Sekhmet is the Egyptian goddess of war and of strength and power, and of both pestilence and healing. Most gods, a god of death is also a god of life. So, if it's a god of war, then it's also a god of peace, but a god of, pestilence and a god of healing. Sekhmet is a very powerful Egyptian goddess. She looks like a lioness. She looked like a lioness. She has the face of a lion. She had a big headdress on, like an Egyptian headdress. She was dressed in an Egyptian, like a dress. She was carrying an ankh in her right hand. And the ankh is the round symbol with the bar and kind of like a cross on the bottom of it. And she carried it like her hand was around the round part of the ankh. She had that in her right hand. And she was commanding me with her left hand. She had the ankh pointed right at my heart. Rise! Rise, my queen! Rise! And she was literally commanding my energy to get focused upward onto my heart center. And she kind of brought me into my heart center. And at that moment, she had like this round, I want to say dial or a lens. It was like a focal lens, like a, glasses or something. It was like a round focal lens on top of her headdress. And the sun had just come up over the tree line as she's telling me to rise, rise, my queen, rise. And she focused her little round dial onto the sun, and the sun came streaming through that dial directly into my heart space. And I just started, it's like I was getting electrocuted, and in a good way, not in a bad way. It didn't hurt, but I could feel the energy coming through her of the sun through her lens into my heart, I was getting an energy upgrade. And it was amazing. But I was just literally shaking. My intuitive healer came over and like put her hands on me to make sure I was okay. I wasn't having a stroke or a seizure or something. But I was receiving so much energy directly into my heart. And then the gentleman on my left held out his hand and he says, "Rise, my queen, rise." And I just wanted to take his hand so badly. I'm still in real life sitting under my covers holding my rose, like getting electrocuted from Sekhmet. And I wanted to take his hand so bad. And I didn't know how. So that's one thing that's different about the ayahuasca journey and the mycelium journey. In an ayahuasca journey, I feel the entities that I'm interacting with, and I could have felt the hugs and everything. I could see them and I could hear them speak to me, but I couldn't feel them. So I didn't know how to take his hand, and I said, "I want to go with you. I don't know how." And he said, "Do it on the inside. This is a spirit journey. Do it on the inside. Go to the next level on the energy, in your energy chakras, basically. Do it on the inside, meant go to the next level chakra." And so I was fully in my heart space with Sekhmet. Really got me in my heart space. And so I just told him how much I loved him. I got kind of in my throat space, and I just intuitively, I'm speaking, not actually speaking out of my mouth, but I'm communicating with him telepathically. And I just said, I'm in my throat space now, and I'm just like, "I love you so much, and thank you so much for being here. Thank you for helping me. Thank you for holding out your hand to lead me and guide me." And then all of a sudden, he's like, "Look up." And I looked up, and this bright golden light was shining, but now we were in a crystal palace. I felt like I was inside of a crystal. I felt like I was inside of the most beautiful crystal that you can imagine. And I knew that this was the crystal palace of wisdom. And I was amazed. And I believe that in your pineal gland, you have crystals in your pineal gland that get stimulated when you're on a DMT kind of journey. I believe that I went into my pineal gland and that I was having an experience in the crystals in my pineal gland, which is also the crystal palace of wisdom. And I don't know what happened in the crystal palace of wisdom other than I was amazed, and I just stayed there like amazed that I was with my spirit family, that my spirit family was Egyptian, and that they had led me to this beautiful crystal palace. That's all I remember about the journey, because after that, my intuitive healer came and was like, "Okay, it's time to have some water and stretch and get up and let's go, inside and get warm. We've been out here for 3 hours." And I was like, 3 hours? How did that was not 3 hours. That's crazy that all happened in 3 hours. I can't imagine that was actually 3 hours of time. And so you kind of lose like touch with like, what is time? Time is a construct. It felt like I was only there for 30 minutes, and it had been a 3-hour journey. And then we came inside and had a little snack. We had some fruit and nuts and some Turkish delight from the holidays. I had some Turkish delight left over. And so, we just had some snacks, and we're all talking and sharing a little bit about our journeys. But it was truly, it was everything that I had asked for, because I had asked to reconnect with my ancestors and to just be loved on. I just wanted to be loved on. And that's exactly what I got. And how cool that I have Egyptian ancestors that wanted to come back and help me rise, my queen, rise into my higher self, my higher senses of who I am and what I'm doing here, why we're here, and the love, the love and the trust, knowing that I have guides that I can take their hand that will lead me to the wisdom and the knowledge within. So it was all so very amazing, and I am a fervent believer that plant medicines are so healing. Plant medicines are the original medicine. Every medicine still is mainly from plants. We chemically change and mass produce the chemicals that we find in the plants, but the medicine comes from the plants. And so plant medicine is the indigenous original form of medicine ever. People have been doing hallucinogenic psychedelic drugs since apes. I mean, literally since apes. We have evolved, since the 70s to condemn and judge these kind of plant medicines as bad. There's a lot of politics involved in that I don't agree with. I think that there's so much healing and that there is so much wisdom and knowledge in these medicines that can connect us back to our spirit, to our source energy of our heart. And that's what's so needed. There's a little cartoon that I saw recently that's a guy is sitting around a fire by a shaman, and he's asking the shaman, what's wrong with the world? Why is everything so crazy? And the shaman says, you've lost connection with spirit. And that's it. That's what's wrong with the world. That's what's wrong with people. That's what's wrong with the whole energy of the planet at the moment is changing because we are reconnecting with spirit. And plant medicines are a way to do that in a very expedited manner. It helps you visually reconnect with spirit, visually see the world in a different way, changing your perspective of understanding what's going on, what's happening in this life. So for me, feeling a little bit alone, I'm single, my parents have died, I don't have a lot of family, I needed to reconnect with my spirit family and to be loved on. And I visually and audibly got to do that in this mycelium journey. And it was lovely. And I needed that. I needed that. So that's kind of the journey. That was the journey. Again, the difference between mycelium and ayahuasca is the touch. I couldn't feel them touching me. So for that reason, I kind of prefer ayahuasca. But for the calm, beautiful, healing energy that I got from the mycelium, it's a healing medicine. It is a medicine of healing. So I hope that this information about my personal journey has been helpful to you. Maybe it'll help you change your mind about thinking about it. I would definitely encourage you to do it in a safe manner. to get your plant medicine from a source that you trust, to have a guide there who can guide you and help you. Make sure, you're safe physically and spiritually, to hold your hand and give you a hug if you need it. That really is part of the process of doing it in a ceremonial environment, is to feel safe and feel loved and cared for. So definitely finding source medicine, finding the right guides to help you along on this journey are important. But, it all starts with changing your mind and how you think about these kind of medicines and their uses. There's so many uses for this kind of plant medicine. It definitely is something that I can see very helpful with depression, very helpful with trauma survivors, PTSD. I can see that this is a healing medicine. It's a love medicine. It opens your heart. It's a heart-opening medicine, and it really was beneficial for me. So I hope that you have enjoyed my mycelium journey experience. If you would click the like button for this episode. You're welcome to subscribe to Tales of a Death Doula, and come back and enjoy more crazy stories from Martha the Death Doula. I hope you have a blessed day, and thank you so much for joining me.